Somewhere in your kitchen sits a forgotten tool worth a fortune. On this list, one of these sold at auction for 6 figures. Most of them were used until they wore out, then shoved aside when something electric came along. The ones that survived are the ones worth hunting for. Number 10. Egg beaters. A rotary egg beater is 2 meshed gears turning a pair of wire whisks from a single hand crank. Before electric mixers arrived, nearly every American kitchen kept one clamped and ready inside a drawer. The rotary beater was patented by Turner Williams of Providence in 1870. The Dover Stamping Company made the design so dominant that cooks simply called any beater a Dover. Early cast iron examples with rare makers' marks now sell for real money. For generations, this was simply how you cooked, by hand, with tools built to last a lifetime rather than a warranty. A common Dover in working order sells in the $100 to $500 range. But early cast iron beaters, patented soon after 1870, carrying rare makers' marks, climb far higher. Why did it beat eggs so fast? The large drive gear turns a small pinion many times over, so one relaxed crank turn spins the whisks a dozen times. Simple gearing multiplied human effort, and no motor was required. When the mixer and the blender arrived, gadgets like these were quietly retired to the back of a drawer. Number 9. Copper molds. A copper jelly mold is a hand-formed shell of tin copper. Its inside shaped into towers, fruits, or fish. Fill it with jelly, chill it, and unmold a wobbling, edible sculpture at the center of the table. Elaborate molds were status symbols on the Victorian table. London makers like Benham and Froude stamped their copper, and a household serving architectural jellies was announcing it could afford both the mold and the servants to use it. Complete stamp sets bring the most today. In a wealthy Victorian household, the kitchen copper was a statement of status as much as a set of tools. A good stamped mold runs $200 to $800, and the finest date to the 1880s Victorian Golden Age. Buyers hunt for a clear maker's stamp and the original bright tin copper shine. Why copper and why tin inside? Copper pulls heat away faster than almost any kitchen metal, so a chilled jelly sets quickly and evenly. The tin lining kept the copper from tainting the food, and the sharp detail let the shape release cleanly. The whole point was theater at the table, a dish that arrived looking like architecture, not just dessert. Number 8. Graniteware. Graniteware is sheet steel coated in speckled porcelain enamel. Sold as lightweight, rust-proof, and easy to clean, it flooded American kitchens from the 1870s. And the number 1 item on this list has sold for the price of a small house. The St. Louis Stamping Company sold it as granite ironware, and gray speckled pots became the everyday cookware of a nation. Today, plain gray is nearly worthless, but rare cobalt, red, or end-of-day swirl patterns turn the same humble pot into a prize. Enamelware went everywhere the pioneers did, because it was light, tough, and almost impossible to break. Common gray enamelware barely sells, while rare colors and swirls reach $300 to over $1,000. Since the 1870s, these flooded kitchens, but only cobalt blue, chrysolite green, and marbled end-of-day pattern pieces are the ones collectors chase. Enamel is really glass. Powdered glass for it was dusted onto formed steel, then fired until it fused into a hard, glossy skin. Because the color was set in the kiln, unusual shades meant an unusual, harder-to-make batch, and that rarity is exactly what buyers now pay for. Every one of these items was born in a kitchen that ran on fire and ice long before the wall socket. Number 7. Apple peelers. Clamp it to the table, spear an apple on the fork, and turn the crank. Gears drive the apple against a blade that peels, cores, and slices in seconds. Its close cousin, the cherry pitter, used the same clamp and crank trick to punch stones out of fruit. Both were the smart kitchen gadgets of their day. Peeling apples for pies and cider was endless work, so inventors attacked it. Between 1850 and 1890, the Patent Office granted well over 100 patents for mechanical apple parers alone. The rarest cast iron designs and name makers are the ones worth real money today. Autumn meant preserving season, and the right gadget could turn a bushel of fruit into pies in an afternoon. Most parers sell modestly, but rare cast iron examples reach $200 to $1,500. With over 100 patents filed, a scarce mechanism or a marked maker separates a common parer from prize, and the same holds for the cherry pitter. The clever part is doing two things from one crank. A gear train spins the apple, while a spring-loaded blade rides along its changing curve, so the peel comes off in one ribbon. The cherry pitter works the same way, driving each cherry onto a punch that shoves the pit straight through. Doing this by hand, all day, is exactly why inventors raced to mechanize the humble kitchen chore. Number 6. Coffee grinders. Picture a cast-iron mill with two great painted wheels and a brass hopper, bolted to a store counter. A shopkeeper poured in beans, spun the wheels, and ground coffee to order. These were the espresso machines of the 19th century general store. The Enterprise Manufacturing Company of Philadelphia patented its double-wheel counter mill in 1873, and it became a fixture from city groceries to frontier trading posts. Large restored examples in original paint, especially by Enterprise or Elgin, are the grinders that command thousands. Freshly ground to order was the everyday luxury the general store offered its customers. Small box grinders are cheap, but a large restored wool mill runs $500 to $3,000. Buyers pay for size, original paint, big cast wheels, and a bright brass hopper on a maker like Enterprise, patent dated to 1873. Why the two huge wheels? They're flywheels. Their weight stores momentum, so once spinning they carry the burrs through hard beans without stalling. Inside, two ridged iron burrs crush and shear the coffee, and a screw sets the gap for coarse or fine. For a rural community, the general store was the supermarket, the hardware shop, and the news hub all at once. Number 5. Butter churns. A Dazey churn is a glass jar with a geared lid and wooden paddles inside. Turn the crank and the paddles beat cream into butter, right on the table. And the skillet at number 2 can outsell a used car. The Dazey Churn and Manufacturing Company of St. Louis patented its glass jar churn in 1922, and it sat in farm kitchens for decades. Big 2-gallon jars are common and cheap. It is the rare small sizes, the number 10 and under, that send prices soaring. Turning milk into butter was a daily ritual, and doing it in glass let the whole family watch the magic. A big common churn is cheap, but a genuine small-size Dazey runs $500 to $4,000. Check the number embossed on the jar and lid, patent marked to 1922, because size decides value more than anything else here. So how does turning a crank make butter? The geared lid spins wooden paddles that whip the cream, throwing fat globules against each other again and again. The membranes break, the fat clumps, and buttermilk separates out. Glass simply let the farmer watch it happen. The payoff for all that cranking was fresh butter, and today, a churn that could be worth a fortune. Number 4. The oak icebox. An icebox is an insulated oak cabinet lined with zinc or tin. A block of ice went in the top, cold air sank through the food compartments, and meltwater drained to a pan below. This is how families kept food cold before electricity reached the kitchen. For decades, the iceman was a daily visitor, hauling blocks to the kitchen door. Then Frigidaire and Kelvinator brought the electric refrigerator, and through the 1920s and 30s the icebox was pushed out for good. Beautifully restored oak examples now sell as coveted antique furniture. Before the electric refrigerator arrived, a kitchen kept its food cold with ice, sawdust, and a great deal of patience. A restored oak icebox runs $1,000 to $3,000 as antique furniture. Value rides on solid quarter-sawn oak, original brass hardware, and clean interior lining, all of it doomed once the electric fridge took over in the 1920s and 30s. Why did the ice always sit up top? Because cold air sinks. Chilled by the block above, the air falls through the food compartments, warms, rises back toward the ice, and cools again. That slow natural loop, plus thick cork or sawdust insulation, held the cold in. The electric refrigerator ended all of that almost overnight, sending the icebox to the antique shop. Number 3. Jadeite glass. Jadeite is opaque, jade green glass, made into mugs, bowls, and plates. McKee poured it out cheaply through the 1930s depression, and Anchor Hawking's Fire King line made it a mid-century kitchen staple from 1942. Today, the rare pieces are anything but cheap. Jadeite was everyday glass, sturdy and sold by the diner and the dime store. Then celebrity collectors turned it into a craze, and prices exploded. Common cups are affordable, but rare shapes, colors, and heavy restaurantware from Fire King now cross $1,000 apiece. Glassware this ordinary was never meant to last, which is exactly why the survivors are so prized. Common Jadeite mugs stay affordable, but rare individual pieces top $1,000 each. Fire King launched in 1942, and collectors pay for scarce shapes, unusual colors, and a clear maker's stamp on the base. Where does that jade color come from? Adding iron oxide tints molten glass green, while fluoride compounds cloud it into a solid, opaque body instead of clear glass. Pressed into molds and fired, it came out tough and creamy, which is why so much of it survived to be collected. A single shelf of the right pieces can now be worth more than the cabinet it sits in. Number 2. Cast iron. Griswold and Wagner made cast iron skillets so smooth and precisely cast that cooks never let them go. Look in your own cupboard because number 1 is the biggest shock on this entire list. Griswold Manufacturing of Erie, Pennsylvania, made cast iron from 1865 until 1957, machining its pans mirror smooth when rivals left theirs rough. Most Griswold skillets are affordable and usable, but the rare early Spider logo skillet has sold for over $8,000. Cook on one for years, and it only gets better, which is why the good ones almost never get thrown out. Everyday Griswold skillets sell for tens of dollars, but the rare Spider logo skillet has topped $8,000. Across Griswold's 1865 to 1957 years, the maker's logo, the size number, and the casting quality are what turn a cupboard pan into a jackpot. What made these pans special? After casting, Griswold machined the cooking surface glass smooth, while cheaper makers left theirs pebbly. Thick, even iron spread, heat steadily, and the polished face seasoned into a naturally slick finish. Better casting is exactly what collectors are paying that logo premium for. Cast iron like this was built to outlive its owner, handed down through a family for 100 years. Number 1. Stoneware Crocks. Salt-Glazed stoneware is heavy gray clay, hand-thrown and fired with salt thrown into the kiln for a glassy skin. Potters brushed cobalt blue birds, flowers, and animals across the front. These everyday crocks are the runaway number 1 on this list. In the 1800s, these crocks stored pickles, butter, and salt pork in every pantry. Plain ones are still cheap, but elaborate hand-decorated pieces with big cobalt birds or scenes now bring 5 and 6 figures, and the very best have sold past $100,000 at auction. Every crock began as a lump of clay in a potter's afternoon, made by the thousand and saved by the few. Plain crocks cost little, but elaborate cobalt-decorated stoneware runs from $10,000 into six-figure territory. Made across the 1800s, their value rides on the salt-glazed finish, the cobalt bird or scene, and the potter's mark. Why throw salt into a blazing kiln? At full heat, the salt vaporizes and reacts with the clay's surface, fusing into a thin, glassy, waterproof coat with a faint orange peel texture. The cobalt, one of the few pigments to survive that inferno, stayed vivid blue, and that is what buyers prize. The plain ones store the pickles. The decorated ones now headline the auctions. From a hand crank beater to a $100,000 crock, the ordinary can be gold. Check your own cupboards before you donate a thing, and watch this next.